So we actually don't have any news today, thank goodness, because today we could finally do a Transformer Slag podcast Patreon listener question. Once again, if you want to be part of the Transformer Slag podcast, help support the podcast and let us know we're doing a half-decent job here in the Transformer world, patreon.com/Protoman, or check your pinned comments or your description below. And we got a pretty awesome question today because it's falls into that Transformer finance kind of question, but it's also one that falls into just being someone who's a toy collector and managing finance. And that's a very important thing because this hobby could get pretty crazy and expensive, and it's all about balancing that. And I like to believe that I've been pretty successful with that. Granted, I had a really good foundation in terms of, having a father that was a toy collector and having a mother that was a financial advisor. So I kind of had that combination of balance of both, but there was a lot of other stuff there too. And I'm going to get into that with this Patreon listener question from Cringe McCringle. Love that name. And Cringe McCringle wants to know, hey Proto, I got a Patreon listener question for you. So recently my financial aid report back from college, I got my financial aid report back from college, and I have to start paying tuition. There is some good news though. I might be able to graduate a year early and make enough to pay for this summer. This leads to my question, which is, how did you save for a house and other big purchases throughout your life while also being a hardcore Transformer collector? Thank you for all you do and all the advice, Cringe McCringle. Thank you for the kind words and being a Patreon member and everything like that. The first thing that I have to say, more than anything else, and this is such a key thing, and it does not apply to everybody, but this is so key, is start early. I understand that, the old saying is it's never too late to start, but I mean, dead serious, guys, start early. According to YouTube analytics of my channel, almost 50% of my audience is between the age of 18 and 35. So that's the prime time to start early. If you're over 40 and living on your own, you're kind of already at a huge disadvantage, no offense to you, if you are in that case. And 45% of my viewers, by the way, are between the ages of 35 and 55, with oddly enough a small percentage, only 3.7 being under the age of 17. I guess it shows when you're an educational podcast, you're not going to get the kids. You got to be more visual and go, hey, look at me. And also, just to round it off, 4.2% of all my audience is women. So how you doing? Anyways, point is start early. Start early. If you're hearing my voice right now and you're in your early 20s, listen, this is very important. The first thing I'm going to say, and this is just what I did, but you could try to take pieces of this to kind of help your situation too. Number one, don't move out. And this is in your teens and your 20s. Now, I know not everyone has the best living conditions with their parents. Some people might have a bad social situation or something like that. But if you're living in a great house with a great foundation and your parents are awesome, there's no reason to move out, because if you have that great situation, strong chance, you don't got to worry about that internet bill. You don't got to worry about rent. You don't got to worry about heating. Heck, that fridge probably stocked and stocked for you. So if you have a really good living situation and parents that are game, don't move out. That's a power move in itself, because the amount of money that you would be saving monthly is immense. Probably the only thing you would have to worry about in the modern era is a cell phone bill. And I kind of had an advantage in the fact that when I was growing up in my 20s, we didn't have the crazy smartphone, cell phone bills that we have today. I had a pay-as-you-go flip phone that I was paying $10 a month. So I even had a little bit of an advantage there too, in that I didn't have those crazy cell phone bills. And there was no Netflix too, but chances are I get a feeling my mom probably would have been paying for the Netflix. Not that I'm big on it anyways. So just that foundation alone will save you so much money. So much money. And it saves you from ending up in what I call the hamster wheel of life, which is sometimes if you move out early, you're right away, you offload all these bills onto yourself and puts you in that hamster wheel that it's very difficult to build any kind of financial wealth. It's very difficult because every single month you're paying rent, which, I mean, I'm not going to put a number out there because that ranges from wherever you live in the world, but it still is a percentage of your income from whatever your job is. Add that to food, add that to heating, add that to, electricity. Again, everyone has different situations. Internet, cell phone bills, like Netflix, all these different monthly expenses. You got to be smart with that stuff. So don't run out and go buy something right away just because it's new, in terms of like, you got to get these new shoes, this new shirt, this new that. Everything comes around sooner or later, especially like, I don't want to name a friend of mine, but really hardcore into video games, buys everything day one. And he even buys games day one, and he doesn't even get around to those games until much later. And I used to ask him, like, why do you do that? You buy the game day one, and you don't play it until, like, a year later sometimes because you're so backlogged. Like, you could have bought it a year later, and it would have been cheaper. And he goes, well, I want to support the developer. Yeah, but chances are that developer's not going to be supporting you when you're living paycheck to paycheck. So that's kind of crazy. But getting into the hobby now, even with all the crazy stuff I have, people see me posting photos of all kinds of Transformer toys throughout the years and stuff. But if you ever notice, especially with my Instagram and stuff, I rarely post the newest toys. You ever notice that? I might post a Kingdom toy, but maybe 6 months to a year after it came out. You won't see me posting Legacy toys week 1, week 2, week 3, month 1, month 2. You ever notice that? Because I wait. I kind of position myself in a situation where I look for sales, I look for deals. I mean, again, I don't want to plug the Patreon again, but the Patreon leads to you having the Discord where we share the sales and all the retail deals that exist in our hobby so we don't have to pay full price. Because it could get very expensive, especially in a day today where 4 deluxes, a full wave of deluxes, could run you almost $120, where that used to not be the case even back then. And even back then, I wasn't doing that. You got to kind of, you got to be a little cheap. It's sad, but it's true. And, also at the same time, I'm lucky that I have individuals in the fandom that if they find those sales in other regions, because I'm in Canada and they're USA, friends like my friend Jason or David, I don't want to say their full names for their own privacy, but if they find those deals, we all hook each other up and we help each other, a regional cheapness, if you will, too. Because some people might say, well, I live in the UK and it's really tough to get Transformers. Well, that's where you got to network a little bit, unfortunately. And when you're in this hobby, it's more than just about collecting for yourself. You have to also help others, too. But again, that's why I have a whole section on my Discord dedicated to sales, just because it's a way to save money and be smart with your wallet. And the truth is that most Transformer product, and I've talked about this in all our finance videos in the past, but most Transformer product drops about 90% of its MSRP within, I would have to say, the first year. And then it goes back up just as quickly, but it goes from, to give an example, $25 deluxe class Transformer. And then sometimes people will open that thing up and then it goes, like you go to buy, sell, trade forums and stuff, and people are selling it for sometimes $5, $3. They just want to get rid of it. Now, granted, it's going to tread back up afterwards over time. It might return to its MSRP or even go up. But there always is this sweet spot where so many Transformer toys just take a dive in value, especially the loose complete ones that were bought by people and they need money. And I mean, all you have to do, two things: go on your favorite forum, whether it be on Facebook, on TFW 2005 or whatever, or even on Twitter, and just look for people that are, just type Transformer sales on Twitter and see who's selling. Go on TFW 2005 and see who's selling. You're going to see a lot of fire sale stuff because there's always people that are getting into the hobby and then getting out of the hobby, or they need money for some reason. And you're going to see a whole bunch of recent stuff that is a fraction of the cost, and it was just opened up. That's all it was, really, at the end of the day. Now, granted, that doesn't apply to every transformer, so you don't have to run out and buy every transformer new because you're scared that something might go up in value. There's a small, honestly, 5% of stuff that really goes crazy. For every, 90% of Kingdom that's going to be ridiculously cheap and then goes up again slowly, there's going to be maybe that one figure that holds its value or goes up, like, let's say, a Netflix Soundwave, especially now with recent news. But that's a very small percentage. More often than not, stuff goes down. I mean, as someone who's been to TFCon and BotCons for almost 2 decades now, and seeing what the secondary market is actively on old product that's sometimes only a year old and how cheap it is because new product is the new hotness. I mean, I don't want to get too much into that, but I mean, it's a sad reality that if you really harness that and pay attention to it, you save so much money by just being patient. And I don't want to get too much into the ups and downs of products because those are just whole topics in themselves. And again, we've done individual Transformer Slag podcast Transformer finance segments about it. But it is something to keep in mind. People need to understand that, I used to work at Burger King during my early youth, and I barely made $20,000 to $25,000 a year. Barely. But my saving came from an internal entrepreneur spirit that I had at a young age. I always had this idea that, if you don't work for money, you won't get the money. It's plain, and it sounds so simple, but let me explain. I always had this thing where it's the more effort you put in, the more you're going to get money out. And it doesn't just apply with work, which is you go to work, you do whatever your job is, you get that paycheck. That's fine. And most people, when they go home, they go, all right, now I'm going to just melt onto the couch, play some video games and everything like that. But I also were taught that you could take advantage of your environments and be able to make money in that same sense. When I worked at Burger King, they had toys, and they would have sometimes they'd even have promotions of toys that were chase figures. And I was just using my mentality going clearly if, there was the Homer Simpson Golden Homer chase figure from the Simpsons movie, if that just gives you an idea how long ago it was when I was still working at Burger King. And even before that, Episode 3 Star Wars, the breathing Darth Vader chase figure. So I was always on top of that stuff. Everyone's environments have different things. When I started working at a garage early on, when I first started doing mechanics, now I had a lift that I could use, that I could bring in friends' cars and do private jobs. And my boss was cool with it. So now I could, do oil changes and tire changes privately and make some money on the side. You have to have that kind of extra spirit of making money too. That adds to it. So you're saving money, you're being careful with your hobby, and you're making money on the side. And you're squirreling it away the whole time while you're still living with your parents and avoiding all of those costs. So you'd be surprised how quickly the finances grow, where I hate to say it, but I see so many of my friends, they didn't live that life. And they worked a job. They would go out. They'd spend tons of money. I remember one of my friends, don't want to name him, but he said, Proto Man's got a Garbo shoe game. Because I used to just buy basic shoes. You know what I mean? I'd go to Payless and just buy a nice pair of it looks like Converse, but it's not Converse. And it was $20. While on his hat that he had on his head probably was more money than all the clothing I wore, But the sad truth is he's not a homeowner. And let's just say his financial situation isn't that great. And that's why I don't want to name names, but it's you can't be swayed into that kind of thing. There's a way that you could win this in the end. I forget what the quote was. It's you could dress to look rich, but you're really poor, but it's better to look poor but really be rich, and it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy when it comes to that kind of stuff. Now, the last part of your question especially was how was I able to buy a house and other big purchases while also collecting? I, again, was being very careful. I think my big epiphany, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast in the past, was during Energon, which was 2003 going into 2004, I bought everything day one. Everything. Every single thing. I was blowing entire paychecks. And my big epiphany with that is then I went to BotCon the following year, and everything from Energon, with the exception of like literally 2 or 3 figures, were loose complete at that BotCon for like 25% of the price. Why did I spend, mind you, this is Canadian numbers, but it's like, why did I spend $49.99 on Energon Scorponok when there he is for like $15 complete at BotCon? Why did I spend all that money on all the deluxes when I could have got them at $5 a piece complete at BotCon? And I see that same story every day still to this day, where yesterday's stuff is old news, no one wants it, and the new stuff is the new hotness. I'm reminded of TFCon's charity auction, where we managed to get the very first wave of Titan's Return when it was brand new. It was barely out in stores. And we auctioned those off, and each individual Titan of those, Titan's Returns Deluxe class, each one of those sold for $40 each, because people just wanted to get their hands on that chrome dome and the hard head, and I think Mindwipe was part of that first wave too. And it just showed how like people are crazy for that. Now you can't get rid of those. If you have a Titan Returns, chrome dome or Mindwipe, chances are you're probably selling them for $10 right now on the buy sell trade forums on TFW 2005. So it just shows how like, people get that new hat kind of syndrome. I want it from this, to quote The Simpsons. And it kind of holds people back in a lot of ways financially. You got to be smart. You can't just, look, just recently, we just had our Transformer Tuesday, whatever you want to call it, and all these pre-orders went up. Everything went up, and I was excited about a lot of that stuff. I really am, but I didn't pre-order anything. I said I'm going to wait for when it's in stores, because especially I'm going to be able to monitor, see how much inventory of it exists. Is there a sale coming? Is there an opportunity to pick it up cheaper? Is there people that already pre-ordered it, they got it, and now they changed their mind? There's so many chances for that. And I'm not like a mint in box collector either. So it not having the package saves me the trouble, and in that sense too. I don't have to like buy something to open it up and recycle it. It's a lot of things. And it's all of that led to a really good financial situation that by the time it came for me to look at home ownership, which was a reality in the back of my mind since, like 2005, around 2008, 2009, I started looking at buying a home. And I was lucky in the sense too that around that time the recession happened. Now, granted, the recession didn't hit Canada as hard as it did the United States, but it did in a little bit. And I was able to get a house that would have been, I don't want to say the numbers, but that would have been X amount, and it was slightly cheaper because it was the recession. But I probably still could have afforded it at full price at the full price also. So it didn't really make much of a difference. But I was lucky in that sense where I saved a little bit. I saved a little bit in a small sense. But, I had enough to make a pretty decent down payment. And the shocker that hit me was when I started paying my monthly mortgage, it dawned on me that my monthly mortgage was cheaper than some of my friends who had downtown apartments paying rent. And that also made me go like, some people, they don't have their priorities. But again, not everyone does have the same social situations, and they sometimes don't have the same situations to build up financial wealth. But it's all about self-control. It really is. You don't need that $5 Starbucks coffee. You really don't. I know a lot of people get it, but you don't really need it. You don't need to own a $40 t-shirt that you're just going to wear at home. There's a lot of t-shirts you could buy at Walmart that also have geek stuff on it that are $10. There's ways that you could kind of play it. And I know it makes me sound like I'm cheap, but the end result you're going to be so grateful for. And trust me, no one ever looks back and goes, yeah, man, back in 2006, I looked fly. And then they look around themselves and they realize now I'm still living in an apartment, paying rent. And, you could look at those moments all you want and celebrate them, but you really want to create a good financial stability for yourself so that the future is easy. And home ownership is becoming more and more difficult than ever for youth. And I really sympathize with them too, because it's not instilled in their culture to look at that. There's this whole kind of encouragement to kind of get out there, move away, spend money, spend. And home ownership is something that seems to be impossible, primarily because they just don't have the wealth in order to even do a down payment or to even do a bid on a house. And I was just lucky that I was taught at a young age to kind of have that entrepreneur spirit. And I mean, to kind of end it even to today, I work at BMW, but I run conventions. So I was able to make money through my hobby too. I work at BMW as a car mechanic. I make money running conventions. And the podcast is self-sustaining itself by what you, the Patreon people, donate, and the small percentage that YouTube gives. YouTube monetization is not what it used to be, unfortunately. It's not. It's unfortunately. It's not 2010 anymore. 2010 was like the golden era of YouTube monetization. Those days are long gone, unfortunately. And we get taxed. Even Canadians, we get taxed now. So imagine getting a United States IRS tax bill in the mail as a Canadian, because I owe taxes to the United States because I make YouTube money. So it's not as easy as it used to be. So that's just something I'll say. That's why Patreon is so helpful, because at least it's something that is guaranteed in a lot of ways. Where who knows month to month, day to day, year to year how YouTube's gonna be. They could put it all to zero for tomorrow for all we know. So I'm always grateful for what you patrons do and stuff, because it gives a good incentive to keep doing this daily. You know what I mean? It's something where it's an extra boost, and it helps with all the other finance and stuff like that. But that's how I pretty much did the hustle and how I survived throughout all those years. And you don't need to own every single Transformer. I learned my lesson with that many years ago, especially when the Michael Bay movies hit, and then, more stuff came out than I could keep track of. You didn't need every Fast Action Battler, Robot Replica, Human Alliance. What am I forgetting? RPMs, Unleashed, Transformers Unleashed. What others there were? I have to turn my head now. My God, all the McDonald's stuff. And I mean, I used to get everything back in the day, but it was a lot easier when the merchandising was pretty limited with the Unicron trilogy. The second we entered Michael Bay movie, next thing you know, there's fishing rods with Optimus Prime's face on it, and tackle boxes and bath towels, and it became a different world. So luckily you never had to most of these listeners probably never had to go down that route, because I was actually kind of there at one point. And I think that you kind of have to trip and skin your knee to then realize, you got to slow down. And that's kind of what happened with me, is where I skinned my knee doing that stuff. And then I realized, okay, I got to slow down on this. And it's just safer that way. And if you keep at it and you keep doing that into your 30s, into your 40s, into your 50s, retirement is not a crazy idea. The sad truth is that a lot of times they talk about how 65 is not going to be a realistic retirement for a lot of people. Yeah, for the way that people are thinking today and the modern kind of spending that exists. But if you play it smart, 65 is pretty realistic. So I hope that answers that question. I know it wasn't 100% Transformers related, but it is something that people could take away as a hobby. And again, to my brothers who are over 40 and paying rent right now, like I said, it's never too late, but it's also going to be a much larger, mountain to climb. It's a lot, but at the same time, there's no reason to give up either, because there's still an opportunity to save money, accrue income and stuff. Anyone that hangs out with me at cons knows my game plan. Why do I run a parts party? A parts party is a way to make income from my hobby. There's always tricks. There's always ways to go about it. And to just sit around and just absorb and sit on the couch, you're not going to get anywhere. But like I said, everyone is in charge of their own destiny. And if that's the choice they want to make, they're not allowed to really complain about the results at the end of the day. So I hope that answers that question. Again, Cringe McCringle, I wish you all the best in your academic future. Definitely any kind of student loans or stuff like that, if you ever get any of that, pay that stuff off right away. Pay that stuff off. Get that stuff out of your life as soon as possible, because that stuff will sit over you and hang over your head forever. So get rid of that ASAP. I had a friend who had a student loan, and I told him, bro, literally spend that first year working just to pay off that student loan. Like, put 100% of the money into it. Don't look at your new job and your new paycheck and go, it's time to go have fun now that I'm making big money. Get that student loan out of the way, because if you have debt, it makes it a lot more difficult to apply for a mortgage or something for when it comes to getting a house. So that you have to also build good credit too. And so that's the thing you got to be careful with. And hey, I went into a trade. I didn't fall for the student loan meme, as I like to call it, where some people, they encourage you to go into certain fields, but the amount of money that you need to go into those fields sometimes outweighs the final result when you graduate. And God forbid you end up going out of that field, but you still have the student loan. That's the worst thing. But that's all for another topic and another time, and I don't want to bore you guys too much on it, but it's just a little bit of financial stuff. And, again, the world makes money makes the world go around, and our hobby is very in tune with that of finance and spending. It's a very financial and spending kind of hobby where money is what makes it continue. And I always hope that I could somehow at least instill a little bit of knowledge that could help you guys in the right direction, everything like that. And again, if you're people that are part of the Patreon, they're always able to contact me and ask me any kind of advice when it comes to any kind of spending or everything. I see that all the time. And I just hope it helps, and I hope you guys learn something. And again, if you want to be like Cringe McCringle and be part of the Transformer Slag Patreon, might as well plug it one more time. Again, patreon.com/protoman, or check the pinned comment or the description below. And let's just relax for the rest of the week and talk about the robots in the skies, because it was quite the week.